You want us to sign in on the chat?
I'm sorry.
You want us to sign in on the chat line?
Oh yeah, that would be helpful. It would help us move along. If you all do not mind, if you would take the time to go into the chat, identify names and what organization you may be representing, that will be helpful to us as we go along. Are we ready to get started, Danielle?
I'm just gonna cue it up just for when we do start.
And can we ask everyone who's not speaking if they would put their phones on mute, please, or put their things on mute? I'll try to do my best to mute any background noise. Unfortunately, I can't help that my son and wife are playing in the other room, so give me 1 second. All I could do is shut a door in that case. But yes, please, thank you. Welcome everybody. Please check in by putting your name and your affiliated organization in the chat. Welcome to the 40th District Legislative Bond Initiative meeting. Every year we meet with representatives throughout the 40th District to kind of level set in expectations as we go into our next legislative session. Bond bills are one way that we support the hard work that you all do as leaders in your community on capital development projects. And so hopefully today we may answer some questions that have been lingering for you and provide greater direction for those of you, especially for those of you who may be new to our 40th district process. We will go over an agenda in just a minute, but without further ado, I do want to introduce some of my colleagues. Again, I'm Senator Antonio Hayes, representing the 40th Legislative District in Baltimore City. Delegate Ampry.
Thank you, Senator. Hello, everyone. Delegate Marlon Ampry, representing the 40th District, proud member of the Economic Matters Committee. And the Senator is being so humble. He forgot to remind you all, he just recently got appointed as the new chair of Executive Nominations Committee in the Senate. So that's a big deal. So if everyone can, clap your hands in the chat or what have you, it's really awesome that you got that role, Senator. We're so excited for you. So, you're trying to be on the humble this evening. You go ahead and talk your stuff, Mr. Senator.
Thank you. Appreciated that, Delegate Ampry. I just dived straight into business and forgot to inform, but I appreciate that. Delegate Conway.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm Delegate Frank Conaway Jr., one of your 3 delegates in the 40th District here, and I've been on the Judiciary Committee at least about 15 to 16 years. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Delegate Melissa Wells.
Thank you, Senator. Good evening, everyone. Delegate Melissa Wells. I serve on the Ways and Means Committee. It's good to see you all.
Got you. And I forgot to announce which committee. So Senator Antonio Hayes, I serve on the Senate Finance Committee in the Maryland Senate. Let's go to the agenda, Danielle. All right, so tonight, what we'd like to cover with you all is the legislative bond initiative process. Some people know this process as bond bills. A couple of years ago, we made some changes to the process. Like with bond bills, every bill used to get a number. Now it's not as visible on the legislative bond initiatives. And so we changed the name from bond bills to bond initiatives, but they still serve their same purpose. They're mainly for capital projects, and we'll explain that. Tonight, we'll go over some of the basic eligibility requirements for a bond bill, some strategies for success, because we want everyone to win in this process. We also will go over the schedule for LBI consideration. And so there's certain processes that are in place beyond our local 40th district that we will cover tonight, just so you are made aware of that. There's an LBI hearing process. I believe this year just like in previous years during the pandemic, we may forego those processes. So for those of you who have done bill and bills in the past, usually there's some Saturday that we spend a great deal of our time in Annapolis pleading our case on why we should get a bond bill. Since the pandemic, we suspended some of those processes. And so I believe the plan is to not have people shuffle down to Annapolis again this year for that, but you'll hear more soon. And then there's the 40th District Delegation Review process. Our colleagues in Annapolis, they know that the 40th District is the best district in the state of Maryland. However, they do not want us to give them leave it up to them to make decisions on what we will prioritize in the legislative session. And so we'll go over our internal process in the 40th District so you will be clear ahead of time what projects we're pursuing and what projects we have made a collective decision to put off for the future. And then we'll leave some time for some question and answers. Next slide, please. So what is a legislative bond initiative? As I said, a legislative bond initiative is a request for funding to support non-state-owned capital projects. These projects include various cultural, historic, health, educational development projects, not funded by the state capital grant and loans. A legislative bond initiative is used to fund individual bond bills. LBI funding is authorized by projects initiated by members of the General Assembly. We may at some point talk a little bit about some of the larger projects that we encourage individuals to reach out to the governor's office and the Secretary of Budget and Management. But the legislative bond initiative process is initiated and is at the discretion of those members of the General Assembly of the House and the Senate. The number and type of projects funded by the General Assembly is limited requests for funding. So we have we have a limited amount of money. I wouldn't say small because God knows it's a significant amount of money, especially for those community-based organizations that's doing great work. But there's a limited amount of funding, and the requests we get every year usually far exceed the amount that's available. But we try to do our best based off of readiness and other things, and making the best decisions on behalf of the community on what we will pursue in the next upcoming legislative session. And was that my last slide? Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Delegate Amprey.
Thank you, Senator. So I'm going to briefly just go over some of the criteria in order to be eligible for a LBI. And it's pretty clear cut. But just to reiterate, it needs to be a capital project. So it needs to deal with land and or structures. So that means that it needs to be a building being created, or it can be significant improvements to a building, or significant improvements to the grounds, or what have you. It cannot include things like salaries, benefits, expendable equipment like automobiles, or operating costs. It needs to be something that's going to be built. And it must have a useful life of 15 years. So again, that's why things like automobiles and computers do not fall into this criteria. And also, with the 15-year use, it does not mean that you have to own the building, but it does mean that you need to have a lease that will extend for 15 years or more. So something to consider if you are in a position where you are your lease is coming to an end, or you have the opportunity to extend your lease. If you are going to be submitting a LBI, please keep in mind that it must have a life of 15 years or more. So when you are at the table of negotiating that lease, keep that in mind as you are making yourself eligible to be able to receive these additional state funds. Next slide. The next two items that are part of the eligibility process is it must be distributed to a private organization, but must not be used for projects, but must be used for projects with a public purpose. So the general public must have access to whatever you are creating. So even it might be something that is, for example, for a private club or for a private organization, but if that building or that space is also used for the public to be able to use, to rent or use, that is fine. But it needs to be able to be accessible from the entire public. Could it be a specific public use? Sure. So if it's something for children, for young people, again, it's still for the general public. It can't be designated for just a select group of young people as far as a club or membership, but it must be something where the entire public has access to that building at some point or in some kind of way. And it may not be used for religious purposes. It cannot be used to construct a building in which religious services, Sunday school, or religious education will be held, regardless of other non-religious uses planned for the building. Now, it doesn't mean that a religious entity can receive funds if they are building something that is for the public good. If you are building a employment center, or if you are building, if you're a church or a synagogue and you are building some type of housing, but it's for the general public, that is okay, but it can't be something that is exclusively used for religious meetings or activities. And I see we have some questions coming in, and we'll get to these questions later. But yes, it could be used for any type of shelter for any type of group. It just can't be used for a religious purpose solely, or for a religious purpose is one of the designated primary uses. And I think that is my last slide. So those are the kind of the 4 things that are important as far as eligibility. And if you have any questions, please drop them in, and we will try to do our best to answer them on the chat.
Thank you, Delegate Ampry. So just a few things just to kind of talk a little bit more about strategies for achieving success. And so I think one of the things that's important is like if there's alternative funding. So, you know, we are tightening our belts at the state level, and every year we're always, you know, really push to prioritize projects. We wish we could give money to everyone, but unfortunately we aren't able to do that because we always hear so many really great projects out in the district that we would love to fund. But so one of the things that we want to also look at is as you are doing the application process, and when we also do the hearing that we have at a later date with you all, is what are the other types of funding that you have at the table? What funding is already present? Because all these projects that are typically going to be funded under the LBIs, they need to be shovel ready. So the state wants to know that if these dollars are getting in your hands, that the time between the money getting in your hands and it being used is that window is as narrow and tight as possible. And so that's one of the things is to look at what are the additional types of funding sources that you're bringing to the table, whether it's from other city agencies, state agencies, corporations, private, if it's loans, what have you, or other capital. So those are factors that we want that are taken into consideration. And it also speaks to not only the shovel readiness of the project, but also I think in some cases where there's long-term funding needed, it speaks to the longevity of there being funding at your disposal that will make sure that the seed funding from the state is going to yield additional either development or production or other services as per whatever your project might be. Next slide. So just the other few things that we have to also factor in is delegation support. That's this is like the first step in that process, right? So we're having this information session. That way folks know about the process, what to include. And then I think we'll talk a little bit more about the application process, but we also always like to get a letter of support from your respective community associations in your area that show that there's buy-in there. Our delegation support, you know, we work really hard during the session. I know that the senator was saying earlier how much, you know, we're the best delegation, but our colleagues on budget and tax, as well as on appropriations, they know that the Fighting 40 of delegates are going to be knocking down their door. Every week we check in with each other as a delegation, as a District 40 delegation, but we're always following up with our colleagues on those key committees to make sure that our priority projects, that we are making sure that that we get the funding that we need for it, and we're really advocating like tirelessly on your behalf. The other piece about a strategy is, you know, so sometimes there's projects that have a specific state or local purpose. Oftentimes there's institutions that are statewide, but they fall within the 40th district that are oftentimes also prioritized. And so we really do our best to, work with our colleagues to support those projects, but to make sure that we also are going to still be able to pull through and get these really clearly District 40 focused projects funded as well. But that is something that is taken into consideration as a factor. We really do our best to support those state and local purposes, but to make sure that we still bring home some core project funding for projects within District 40 that are very specifically focused on the unique needs of our district. The other thing is other additional prioritization of projects for that might include municipal or government or local police. We typically we don't really, we don't include those in this advocacy, but it does impact the resources coming to the district or to the city. And so we do have to oftentimes, depending on, how tight things are, those are things that factor in. But again, I think the delegation support, what I want you to walk away from is knowing that once we identify our core projects that we're going to fund under the LBIs, we really work hard as a delegation to get those projects funded. You may not get all the funding that you asked for, but we will really fight hard to try to get that funding through the LBI. And then we will also look at other funding sources that can maybe provide additional funding that we couldn't cover under the LBI that you can get covered either through the state, through different agencies, or covered through the city. So just want you to know that we will fight really hard for you. But I think the key piece is that your project should be shovel ready. And I think that was one of the biggest factors that we use to be able to advocate for you. I believe that's the end of my slide. So I think I'm going to pass it now on to my colleague, Delegate Conaway.
Good afternoon, everyone. Delegate Conaway, LBI schedule. Mid-January deadline for bond bills to be requested and guarantee bills are drafted by the filing deadline, known as the guarantee date. And then you'll get information here on what happens in February, March, and then April. April, we vote on the bond bills. Mid-April, both chambers vote on the final package of bond bills. And general effective date is July the 1st for the bond bill. Is this me too? LBI hearings. Bond bill hearings will provide an opportunity for organizations to supply information to the budget committees on the need for the project. Basically, that's telling us what the project is going to do and explain it to the state, and so that we can all get some kind of idea how we're moving forward. Due to the large number of bond bills, presentations are generally limited in time. It says 5 minutes here. Sometimes I recall 3 minutes. It could change depending upon how many applicants we have. Presentations may include written materials, and I guess in this manner, you should be prepared to present your materials either online and or with individual packages for each one of us who are concerned. And I think that's the end of my slides.
Thank you, Delegate Conaway. Danielle, you mind going back to slide 4? I think I forgot something. I was moving a little too quick. All right, that we were there. All right. So last year, these are our awardees. So to give you an idea about like how much we awarded, there are some exceptions, right? So last year, we partnered with Baltimore Alumni Chapter, Delta Sigma Theta, in a Park Heights community. They have been a anchor in that institution for a long time, providing various services to the community. They were awarded $300,000. Bond Secures Community, Baltimore Community Works, Inc., which is located near the Fayette Street Outreach and Carlton Ridge communities, were awarded $250,000. Douglas Memorial Community Church and the Marble Hill community was awarded $150,000. Last year, there's an asterisk or whatever that little asterisk beside Let's Drive Baltimore Youth Action. So oftentimes we will allocate money to a individual organization and the money isn't spent. And so we could go back and reappropriate it to someone else. So last year, Actually, during the bond bill process, we were alerted that the former, there was a I forget the name of the
The
mansion.
seller's mansion.
The Sellers Mansion had burned down in the Harlem Park community. We had allocated $250,000 to the Sellers Mansion, but because obviously they no longer had a use for that, we could go back to a previous award and reallocated that. So in that case, we had some organizations that were on standby in Let's Thrive Baltimore with services young people in the Sanchester Winchester community. We repurposed that money for their use. No Struggle, No Success is a new organization that's doing phenomenal work with those who are going through reentry. They're over in the Remington Charles Village, like the East Baltimore part of our district, the new part of our district that was just redistricted. Then we awarded them $175,000. Park Heights Community Health Alliance, which is a staple in the Park Heights community, providing access to healthcare in that community. We were able to award them $100,000. Unified Efforts, Inc., Penn North Community. This is an example of an organization that have come back to us in multiple years. I think in the previous year, they was awarded $50,000. This year, they were prepared to, start their project, and they were awarded an additional $250,000. And then Upton Planet also has an asterisk, or should have an asterisk. That was money that was appropriated to another source that we reappropriated because the legislature has the ability to move money around in the capital budget. And so we were able to fund a major project in the Upton Planning Committee area, and that was the renovation of the Perrin J. Mitchell House on November the 1st. I forget at what time, Danielle, do you know? For those of you who would like to join us on November the 1st at 11 a.m., we will have a public announcement of the renovation that's going to take place to the Perrin J. Mitchell House. As you all know, Perrin J. Mitchell, first African-American congressman that we had here. Thank you, Ms. Wanda, at 11 a.m. on November the 1st. So this is a significant part of our history here, especially in that Harlem Park community. And so we are looking forward to celebrating on that day. And so overall, as far as the capital budget last year, we were able to award close to $3 million to community-based projects and support the efforts that you all do on behalf of our communities every day. All right. You want to go back forward, Danielle, to slide number 11.
Now we go.
Sorry, little Antonio just busted into the room like he owned the place. So 40th district review process. So like I alluded to earlier, our colleagues in the legislature prefer for us to prioritize the various requests that we have prior to coming into the legislature. So we ask that application materials and and we've loaded up all of the application materials, and thanks to our very competent staff who's going to walk you through in a minute, you can find all this stuff at our website. So we made as much of it possible available on our website, so you don't have to wait for us to send you a form. You could go right to our website and fill out this information. And so Danielle will walk you through that in a minute. And excuse me, in addition to the bond bill applications, we're requesting that new applicants seek a letter of support from the community association for which the applicant property is located. Oftentimes, you all are doing great work. We want to partner with you in that great work by awarding you a bond bill, but the community association or neighbors of yours may not know that we are investing in that community. I think we just got a question today from Morrill Park about what type of funding we've gotten for that community. And so we ask that a part of this process that you secure a letter of support from the community association where your property is located to let them know that we're making this investment of taxpayer money into your project. And to find out which community association you should contact, visit Baltimore City Planning Community Association Directory. There's the number there. Next slide. All right. Applications must be submitted for you for your
I can
initial.
go over this part.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm
Okay.
gonna put it on mute real quick.
Okay. So for this, I'm just gonna go to the Antonio Hayes website. Give me 1 second. So if you go to antoniohayes.com, and at the top there's a section that says legislative bond initiatives. This is going to be a step-by-step process on how to apply. So once this presentation is over tomorrow, I will upload tonight's presentation, so it will be posted here. So if there was anything from the slide that you missed and you wanted to see, it'll be uploaded here. So it gives you the deadline, which is Monday, November 13th at the close of business, which is 5:30. It gives you how to apply. Step 1, you're going to click here to review the guidelines and the requirements. So it's going to open a separate tab, and then you should go read through these pages that's provided by the General Assembly of what's actually required in detail. Next, you're going to download the application. Once you find that you are eligible for this funding, you're going to fill out this application up into this part. So where it says, please submit the form to your legislator for review, you're not going to actually send this to the legislative bond initiative. You're going to stop right here and then follow our application process. So once you do fill out the form, if you are a new applicant, like the senator said, you're going to go to this website to figure out, if you don't already know what your community association is. Just type in the location and it will pop up for you. And then we made it a little easier. In prior years, you would just email all of your information to our email. This year, everything's on Google. So it's one form, it's one sheet that you enter. So just your email, the name of your organization, your project name, the point of contact, phone number, email, and then the application that I just showed you. You're going to submit this here. You're going to also submit any supporting materials. So if there's any letter of support from the community, you're going to submit that here. And then your presentation. So this is when you're presenting to the whole delegation and community members. Any slides or presentation materials that you want to add, you're going to submit that here. And then just hit submit. And then all of our delegates, whole delegation will get a copy of this. So it's in one place. So then the next thing is that the presentation will be on Monday, November 20th. And all the links for the Zoom. So this is the link for today's Zoom for the application submission. And then for the next Zoom, which is November 20th at 5:30 p.m. is all on this website. So again, once you go to antoniohayes.com, you just click on, this is the website, the homepage. You just click on legislative bond initiatives and everything is on this page. Additionally, sorry, there's one more thing. Once you are, let's say you are awarded this funds, it's going to go to the Department of General Services. So instead of, the delegation, the 40th delegation does not actually allocate the funds. So once you are selected, you can contact our office and we can put you in connection with the Department of General Services. And then it's a separate website that you go through to go through their process to actually get access to your funds. And that's it for me.
All right. And so I think this is the time.
Hey, how are you?
And I think this is the time in the agenda where we open it up from questions for you all. Hopefully we've answered some of the questions in the chat room. So please, if you have your raise your hand feature, if you could make use of that. And also if you have questions that are easily that you could easily type in the chat, please do so, and we'll try as best as we can to answer them there.
Someone was asking about, Miss Carolyn Carey was asking about the November 1st event, the location of the Perrin Mitchell House.
Yeah, I saw that question. I was trying to answer it, but it's not on my schedule yet. So I know Miss Wanda Bess is on here. And
It's I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. It's 828 North Carrollton on the corner of Lafayette and North Carrollton.
Yeah. Thank you, Miss Wanda.
Sure.
So there's two questions, one from Derek DeWitt Senior. Are the funds able to be used for acquisition of property?
Yes.
Thank you. Miss Janet Allen was asking, how do you define new applicant?
So new applicants are if you have never applied for that project, right? And so if this is your first time applying for the specific project, we would consider that a new applicant. And then I thought I saw a thumb or something raised by Miss Smith. Did you want to jump in there? Come off of mute.
Yes, good evening. I thought I saw where January 1st of January was the deadline for filing. And then you had applications due November 13th. Did I get something mixed up there?
Yeah, so November the 13th is where you submit it to the 40th district. And then we have to actually submit it to the presiding officers by that time. By January, we have to submit it to the legislature. So between the time and also to note, we love transparency here in the 40th district. And so we invite all of our community leaders and organizations, whether you have a bond bill or not, we want people to know what's going on in the community. And so the presentations are open to the public. So we invite everyone to listen in and to participate as you give your presentations, because many of our leaders help in the process of us prioritizing what we should pursue in the upcoming legislative session.
We got a question on, is there any indication?
I'm sorry, wait 1 second. Ms. Smith,
sorry.
were you finished? I'm sorry.
Yes, for now.
Delegate Ampry?
No, I was gonna say there's a question from Ms. Early. Is there any indication of the level of funding that is available for the district this fiscal year? And I would just say that we've already discussed it as a team, and we've discussed it as an entire General Assembly that budget's going to be a little tighter this year than previous years. We know that in previous years we've had a little bit of a surplus. A lot of that was due to, again, the Biden and Harris administration giving us a lot of additional funds in response to what happened with COVID. So a lot of that money has been utilized, and we have a bit of a shortfall coming into this year. I know the senator can maybe give a little more information there, along with Delegate Wells being on Ways and Means, but it's going to be a little bit tighter overall. So want to give everybody that heads up. So it's going to be a bit of a squeeze for all the districts, not just the 40th.
Yeah, and to Delegate Ampry's point, I think the budget revenues were released 2 weeks ago, which we for the last 2 or 3 years we've enjoyed some pretty significant times in the amounts that we were able to award. I think this year it's going to be a little bit tighter for good reason, right? We are making a significant commitment to K through 12 education here in the state of Maryland. We're making a commitment to our state employees to make sure that they have decent wages and things of that nature. And then, as the delegate alluded to, the loss of significant federal funding. We do not have the privilege of distributing that this year, but we will do our best to maximize every opportunity. I was going to save it for last, but I will repeat it later on. But for those communities that are along the North Avenue corridor, so those communities that are on North Avenue, or you are within 2 blocks of North Avenue, I would definitely, in addition to bond bill funding, I would employ you to go to the WNADA website. I think someone just put it up there. It's WNADA. It's the West North Avenue Development Authority. There's another funding source that's available to you. I believe on November the 1st, they will be asking for requests for qualifications. And so I would go to their website. If you have a project that's adjacent to West North Avenue, you have multiple options to secure funding in addition to just a bond bill. And so check out the West North Avenue Development Authority. John Pica, you were unable to hit the raise your hand button, so I'm gonna call on you next. You have to come off of mute.
Thanks, Senator. I've been doing this a very long time, and this is the most organized district bond bill. I've never, ever seen anything like this. So congratulations to you, Senator, and the 3 delegates. My question is, generally when you request a bond bill, there's an LBI bill request form or request form. So the process, I want to make sure we do this right. I represent the Salvation Army. The process that closes on November 20th, we need to do that. We need to complete that process and the request form.
No. So the only
The date is the 13th. It closes on the 13th.
Okay.
That's the first thing.
Danielle, what closes on the 13th?
The applications are going to be accepted. The last day is November 13th. The presentations are on the 20th, but because last year I believe we had 26 applicants, we need time to actually process and organize and go through everything before the presentation. So that takes about a week. So the cutoff is 5:30 on November 13th to submit the application.
Right.
And that
John, that's just our internal process, right? And so if you go to the website, there's certain things, certain information that we need. The process which you're referring to is once we submit it to the General Assembly. Evidently, everyone that requests a bond bill this year, we will not proceed to ask for in the General Assembly. There will be some we redirect to other funding sources. But for the sake of our internal processes, that is the November the 13th deadline. And then you will do a public presentation to the community on November the 20th. And then in January is when we will actually fill out the form that's required by the presiding officers to submit to the legislature.
So I want to get this right now. So forgetting the bond bill request form, to get a bond bill reviewed by or considered by the delegation, we need to, on November 13th, begin that process, and it closes on November 20th. We will upload any information. No.
It starts. Is it up? Is it on the website now, Danielle?
Yes, everything is posted on the website now. The only thing that's not posted is this current presentation. I'll post that by tomorrow.
My mistake. So I'll get this right eventually. Sorry to take up all this time.
No, because many other people have that same question, right?
Okay.
And so you should, if you have documents ready, you should go ahead and submit it tonight, tomorrow, whenever. The deadline to do so is November the 13th.
November 13th. So this is for a bond, an LBI request of the delegation. Go on the website and complete that process.
Correct.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, delegates.
I'm not sure who's next, but I see my predecessor, former Senator, former Mayor Catherine Pugh, who actually started this process, John, many, many years ago, where we provide an orientation and then we go through the process. Senator Mayor Pugh.
First, let me make sure I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. First, let me just congratulate you on continuing the process and to say that you are doing an excellent job. Is there an application process? There is an application. And Danielle, is that what you're talking about? Will be up on the website?
Yes, it's currently on the website. That's what I just went over. Once you go to antoniohayes.com, at the top, it's a thing that says Legislative Bond Initiative. Once you click on that page, it has step-by-step process. It's also links to the application, to the Google form. Everything is linked there.
And one final question. I know that you get more than, I think you said 26 applications last year. Can you tell us how many you were able to get through last year? And I know you said the funding is short this year. Any anticipations there? And any particular applications you're looking for?
No. Do you have Danielle, do you have the slide? So everyone could see the I think it was slide 4.
Yes, I'll share it. I believe it was.
Yeah. So this year I know we did not get full funding for
Mhm.
a couple of organizations. The one at top of my mind right now is Delta
Mhm.
Sigma Theta up in the Park Heights community. We fell short of getting them the total requested money. This is the first time they've ever come to the state for funding.
No,
That,
we have, they have. I
right.
mean,
And my
when you're
limited
here.
amount of years. Yes.
Mhm.
And so
Yes, sir.
we definitely wanted to fulfill their requests.
Great.
So that's one that we're anticipating that will definitely come back this year so we can make whole from a previous year.
Great.
I
great.
can also add to Senator, so if everyone looks at those amounts,
Mhm.
this was a lean year. Next year could be leaner. I think typically our numbers were a little higher, like we were able to get like 500,000 for people in the years past. Last year, that was impossible for us to do almost.
Yeah.
So if you look at those numbers, that reflects also a little bit of a leaner request across not just the 40th district, but across other districts. I know the leadership really values this process, so I feel confident like we will get things through, but I think it's just a matter of tempering the expectation of how much money we will be able to get for those that we're able to put in the LBI for.
Yep.
Again, great job. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us this evening. Greatly appreciate it. New Life Recovery.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Senator. Great to see you, and congratulations also. And greetings to you all, and Madam Mayor as well. I just have a simple question. So I've been very attentive. I've been taking my notes. So being that the total kitty center is a little less than it's been in previous years, I'm sitting here trying to figure out, so how much as an organization, because I've got a capital project that I definitely want to put forth through this process. I'm wavering right now in terms of what to ask for. I don't want to ask for too much, and then you just you discount me because I've asked for too much. So I'm trying to understand, based on what's going on with you guys financially, how should I determine what I should ask for? I know how much I need, and how much the project's going to cost, but I'm just trying to understand that.
Great question. And I think Mayor Pugh kind of alluded to this as well. And so I think the comfortable threshold still hovers around like 250,000, right? I think that's a comfortable kind of level where we feel pretty confident that we would be able to secure. For individuals that are requesting amounts greater than that, what I have asked in the past, and I'll ask you to consider this time as well, is to submit a letter to the governor's office and copy the Secretary of Budget and Management, right? And so we have an opportunity to add and subtract from the capital budget, but the governor also has discretion in submitting projects as a part of his capital budget. Oftentimes, he has way more greater discretion than we do as legislators. We try to spread the love around the district, so we're not favoring any one organization, but we look for the greatest amount of impact and how we could, geographically kind of spread things out. But if there are amounts that are greater than 250,000, I think the governor's office is in the process now of accepting letters and requests for funding. Now, that will not exclude you from also seeking a bond bill, right? Oftentimes we won't know. Oftentimes we will make the decision on what projects we're going to pursue prior to receiving the governor's budget. So the governor's budget typically come out the second week of session. We hope to make those decisions about our priorities for the 40th district prior to the governor's budget being released. Now, if the governor's budget is released and it reflects projects that we wanted to pursue anyway, we then go back and replace that project with another project. We try to maximize the amount of money that we could get, and we leave no stone unturned. If we could get some in the governor's budget and some and a legislative bond bill, if the House could give some and then the Senate could give some, we try to piece it all together to make folks whole. So definitely, if you have a project that's greater than 250,000, I would encourage you to reach out to the governor's office. But also, it's very, very important because the governor's office look to the advice of the Secretary of Budget and Management on making many of these decisions. And so I would say also copy the Secretary of Budget and Management as well if you're seeking funding. But do not forget the deadline that we have for the legislative district, because you want to do both of them. You want to cover all bases. And then thirdly, for those, again, that live in that West North Avenue corridor, they actually have a process that's coming up November the 1st. And so I would encourage everyone to go to their website. And also in the spring, while we are in the midst of making our legislative bond bill initiatives, we also oftentimes will reach out to organizations that we did not select in our process and encourage them to apply. There's several pots of money that come out of Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. There's core money, there's Bernie money, there's community legacy, there's seed anchor institution funding. There's a bunch of different funding sources for community-based organizations coming out of the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. So we oftentimes, although we can't get everyone in this round, we try to maximize the number of opportunities we can to secure money in partnership with community-based organizations. Was there another question? Am I missing anything in the chat, Melissa or Danielle? You have to use the Google form for
I have another question. I lost my hand.
Yes, no worries. Go ahead, Ms. Joyce.
Just quickly, you're talking about amounts being allocated for this coming year. Does the overall amount have anything to do with what I've been reading about ARPA funds on the state and local level not being used completely? That some of them may have to be returned because there's evidently ARPA money that was allocated to the state that hasn't been used, and there's a deadline on it.
Now, not that I'm aware of. This is all capital budget money. And I haven't heard those news reports. I have to look that up, Ms. Joyce. That's good information for me. But no, this is unrelated to the use of ARPA money. It's just we have enjoyed a couple of years of pretty significant funding due to the allocation of federal money. So whether that's ARPA, whether that's infrastructure money or whatever, things that we would usually pay for out of the state budget, we were able to use federal money. And so those cases, we were able to leverage additional money. But no, not to my knowledge, this is unrelated. Did you have an additional question? It looked like my screen froze. Let's see. The internet connection is unstable. All right, I'm back. I think. Did we answer your question, Miss Joyce?
Yeah, that part. I said I won't take up your whole meeting if other people have questions.
Yep, that's what we're here for. I do see a hand by Miss Ednam or Mr. or Mrs. Ednam. If you would.
Edna Mans.
Oh, Miss Edna Mans. Yes, ma'am. How are you?
How are you, Senator?
Fantastic.
My question is, Fair Street Outreach had gotten bond bills in the past.
Yes.
And I just wanted to know what have changed. Like, my question was, what type of bond bill can we get? In the past, it was hard bond bill, a soft bond bill, and a grant.
Yes. Good question. Good question. So since the pandemic came, some of the rules around bond bills have changed. one of the things that changed is just the name of it, right? So we used to just call them bond bills. Now, for whatever reason, to distinguish from the old system to the new system, we call them legislative bond initiatives. So that's one thing that changed. Another thing that has changed is we used to require a match. Since the pandemic, we have not been requiring organizations a match. I do not think that we will go back to the day where we're requiring a match, although that can change. I have to find out more information and confirm that. But over the last, at least since 2019, we have not required organizations to have a match. And so we've just for the most part, they've been grants. And so in the past, you used to have a soft match, meaning assets that so say you already owned the building, you could leverage the value of that building as a soft match, or you could have raised the amount of money that you wanted to match. That is called a hard match. But like I said, in the last couple of years, we have not required a match. And then lastly, if you've been through a bond bill process in the past, we used to require organizations to come to Annapolis on a Saturday and kind of present your case before the budget committees. Since the pandemic, we have not had that process take place. We have our public hearing here in the community, and we once we make a decision as a delegation to pursue your request, everyone is notified whether we decide to pursue your request or defer your request to a future year. And so you're not required to do that public hearing piece. And I know that will remain the same this year as well. But those are the changes that I'm aware of. Did I miss anything, delegates, that you're aware of? Okay. All right.
I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
The amount of time that we have to use our bond bill, is it still up to 7 years or is it shorter?
Yes, ma'am. It is 7 years. We part of our vetting process, we try to ask as many questions as possible to make sure that projects are shovel ready. As I said, we usually get more requests than what we have funds for. And so we really, really depend on you all to give us information on whether or not your project is ready to go, because there's so much need in our district. We want to make sure it get to the people that are ready to go. But to answer your question, yes, it still remains 7 years. If for a reason you have a bond bill that was awarded to you in a previous year and you're coming up upon your 7th year where it's due to expire, let us know. We can extend that deadline, but we have to extend it before it expires. You can't come to us once it expires and then we could retroactive extend it. We would submit an amendment to the budget once it's introduced this year to extend the deadline. So if you have a bond bill that you haven't had an opportunity to draw down on funds, that you need us to extend the date, please let us know. On my team, definitely Danielle handles those every year. Unfortunately, as we do our best to try to prioritize those things that are shovel ready, inevitably there are things that happen, prices go up, community organizations just, aren't always ready within that time frame. And so we'll work with you on that.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I saw some other questions. We have a community legacy grant pending and believe we may hear in November if successful what we asked for under bond bill suggested revision. That's right. And so some of you may already, thank you, Dick, for that question. And so I have been assured by the Secretary of the Department of Housing and Community Development, the announcements for some of those funding sources through Housing Community Development will be announced in November. They are in the final stages of making those final decisions. And so it may be the case, hopefully it's on schedule and you'll be in time for, the deadline that we've set. But if that's not the case, if you would just communicate that to us, that you don't need as many funds as you thought you would need, that will free up some decisions that we can make on behalf of another organization to have an opportunity to get some funding. And so that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it, because that'd be very helpful. A lot there are other organizations on here that may be in a similar situation. They may have put in a request for Bernie or Community Legacy or whatever. They won't know how much they actually got until next month. And so we usually get that information, but it's just helpful if you communicate that to us. That way we can make some adjustments. Let me see. There's other questions. Let's see. Do you have to present the full scope of work for the project? Not necessarily. We want you to provide as much detail as possible to help us make an informed decision. And so there are certain things that we do need to know. And those things are prompted in the online application that you will fill out on the website that Danielle pointed out. And so please take a look at that, and pretty much if you answer those questions, put yourself in our shoes, right? Like, we want to have as much information as possible to help make an informed decision, but like, we're not expecting you at this early stage to present us with architectural drawings of your project, right? We're not expecting you to have in some cases, organizations like Dick alluded to may not have all of their funding in place, so they may be waiting on other funding sources or whatever. And so there may be some adjustments moved, but give us as much information as you possibly can so we can make an informed decision. It looks like Danielle answered that. Please revisit, are you accepting return applications? Yep, we're accepting those. How do we find out if community station is a new applicant and needs support letter if we have all newly elected members? Right, and so some communities here are new to the 40th district due to redistricting. If this is your first time applying for a bond bill in the 40th district, we would consider that as a new applicant. So please, if you could secure a letter of support from whatever community association where your building is located, that would be very, very helpful to us. We want to know, communities want to know how we are making an investment into their community. And by you approaching them with a letter of support, that helps keep things transparent and also is an indicator to us that you have a working, healthy relationship with the community association where you're located. What was the response? Didn't hear it. Earlier delegate noted that. Sorry. So Delegate Ampry noted that just recently I was appointed to be chair of the Executive Nominations Committee. What does that mean? So anytime the governor appoints the head of an agency, like the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Transportation, or whatever, those appointments have to come through the Executive Nominations Committee, in which I chair. I have the discretion on scheduling them. If we don't schedule them, we don't take a vote on them, those people cannot assume those positions beyond sessions. There's some times where we may reject a nomination from the governor. So the governor may want to appoint. Last year, we came really, really close to not approving the superintendent for state police because there was some concerns in the community about whether or not he would be a good state superintendent. There were individuals on the committee and in the Senate that voted against him. If for whatever reason a vote fails in the Senate to accept one of these nominations, the governor has to find someone else. But outside of agencies, there's hundreds of boards and commissions that we solicit from the community to serve on. And I'm telling you, the list is exhaustive. We will do our best to get it out up on our website. But everything that happens in the state of Maryland that require a license, there's a board or commission associated with it. Like there's a board that actually certify individuals that want to be home decorators. There's a board that certify if you want to be a appraiser in the state of Maryland. Most of these boards and commissions ask for members of the public to serve. And so those two have to be confirmed by the Senate, and they'll come through my committee. Last year, because the governor was new, and at that time I was the vice chair of the committee, we confirmed more than 1,000 Marylanders to serve on various boards and commissions. And so we will continue to get that information out there as you all show interest in any particular area to make sure that we had the benefit of having the expertise of residents in the 40th district. Who would be the initial point of contact if thinking about changing LBI as per my question? Danielle Ziegler, who serves as my chief of staff, Dick, will be your primary point of contact. Are partial requests granted, or is it all or nothing? Yes. Oftentimes, based on the limited resources, we will we cannot fund everything. We may submit a bond bill or legislative bond initiative for 300,000. The budget committee may cut that in half, as they did with several of our requests last year. And so yeah, you can have partial requests granted or nothing at all. But I will tell you, part of the reason why we have this vetting process is because we have an idea of what we could get accomplished in any given legislative session, and we negotiate with our colleagues in the House, we negotiate with our colleagues in the Senate, and we advocate to make sure that they understand how important these projects are to our district. So I will tell you, in the last at least the last 4 years, we have not had the experience of submitting something to our colleagues that has not been funded. So hopefully that gives you some level of comfort there. Danielle put our email up there. Okay. All right. So I'm finished looking through the chat. I'm gonna come back here, see if there are any hands raised. Are there any additional questions? John Pica, go ahead.
Senator, buried somewhere in this, and maybe you caught it, I didn't catch it. A gentleman asked a very important question, Mr. Vornado. If you ask for 250, you can get less than that. I think that's his question. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Yep. That's absolutely correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Are there any other questions, suggestions, or whatever? So thank you all so much for participating tonight. Again, go to my website at antoniohayes.com. You should be able to find all the information you need about the bond bill process there. If you want to go back over some of the slides tomorrow, Danielle will upload the entire slide presentation that we covered tonight on the website. So you could go to the website and go back through there. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us through our public email addresses. We will do our best to answer those questions. We try as best as we can to, maximize the amount of funding that's available to us. Even if you do not have a bond bill request, please, on November the 20th, please join us, because the diversity of thought that go into some of these bond bill requests are tremendous. Our, leaders in our community put a lot of time and energy into these requests. And so it may be some things that you may pick up for a later year, or that you could share with a neighbor in this process. But please tune in if you can to see what that process is about. Again, and I'm gonna turn it over to my colleagues for some final words, but if you are in the West North Avenue corridor, and that is between 83 and Hilton, and anything within 2 blocks radius north or south, there's another funding source available to you in targeted areas. Go to www.WNAD, it stands for West North Avenue Development Authority, WNAD.org. You go to that website to find out more about that process. Ms. Mayo put it in a chat for you all to see. We are doing, with the help of my colleagues, we're doing extraordinary work in the West North Avenue corridor. I've been talking to, Mayor Pugh about it. I'm excited to, at some point, give her an opportunity to see all that we're doing. But right now, and as you drive through West North Avenue, you may not see what the glory days that my grandma and my mom and aunties used to talk about as far as commerce and residents along that North Avenue, Pennsylvania Avenue corridor. But we hope with the infusion of resources over the next couple of years, that will once be a very vibrant part of Baltimore City that we're all proud of. And so we're working hard at that, and we appreciate all the support that we're getting from residents. With that, I will wrap up and I will turn it over to let's go in reverse order. Ladies first. Delegate Wells.
You tried to catch me slipping, didn't you? Because I'm always last. But honestly, I want to thank all of you for being here. This is something that I will speak on behalf of my colleagues, but we really look forward to not only this information session, but to the presentations, to hearing what folks are doing in the community, and identifying how we can support you, whether it's through the LBI or other means. So really want to thank you all for being here tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing your presentations. I think
Awesome.
November. Yeah, November.
You know how.
Yep. If you're not talking, please put your phone on mute. Delegate Conway.
Yes, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for coming out this evening, and hopefully we gave you the information that you need. And if you need some more information, feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And last but certainly not least, Delegate Marlon Ampry.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you all and talk to you all this evening. Again, this is one of my favorite parts of the work that we get to do, hearing about what you all are doing in the community. You all are truly the change agents, and it's an opportunity for us to partner with you all directly. I just will reiterate what has been said earlier. Please get your applications in earlier rather than later. The date that we give you all is not the date that that you turn it in. It's the last day you can turn it in. So turn it in sooner if you can. Again, it's a pleasure to serve you all. And I really do believe we have the best team here in the 40th. As you heard earlier, we did not pay Mr. Pika to say that. We are truly blessed and organized here to make sure that we can serve you all at the highest level. Look forward to seeing you all's presentations next month.
Again, thank you all for joining us, and have a great night. Continue to stay engaged and involved, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for the meeting.
Indeed.